Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Johnny B here with devslopes.com, and we are continuing on with our Smack Chat app. And we're making some great progress. In just the first couple of lessons, we already got the slide out menu. In fact, let's go ahead and just run this and take a look. In this lesson, we're going to continue working on our UI. We're going to get the channel VC UI set up. So actually, let's go ahead and take a look at our design mockups, and here is what we're going to be working on. So we got a couple of labels, some buttons, a button here, button down here with an image, and a table view that's going to contain our channels later on. And one of the big things here though that we're going to work on is what you see here in the background, this gradient. And so we're actually going to code up a custom gradient view file that's going to be able to do this. All right, so it's going to be pretty cool, pretty fun, and so let's get started. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over here into main.storyboard real quick. And oh my, looks like our files got shifted around a bit, so I'm just going to drag this over. All right, so here's where we're at. Here's what we got so far in our simulator. We're able to pull this and drag this over, and right now our channel VC is just plain white. So let's go ahead and work on that. So how are we going to make this gradient? You know, you might think it's going to be pretty tough, but it's actually not too bad. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to our view folder, and we're going to right click and say new file, and we're going to create a subclass. So we're going to make sure you got iOS selected and Cocoa Touch class. We're going to say next, and it's going to be a subclass of UI view, and we're going to call this gradient view. I'm going to say next and create. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is we're going to make this subclass not only work when we run, but also so that you can see it in real-time action in the storyboard. Okay, so first off, what we got to do is we got to put in a line of code here called IB designable, and basically what this does is this just lets this class know that it needs to be able to render inside of the storyboard. And then we're going to need a couple of variables that we are able to select and change in the storyboard. So for instance, if we come over to the storyboard and just grab any of these UI elements, you'll see here that we have things that we can select and change, and we're just going to create custom variables that we can change ourselves, and that will change the properties of this custom view. Okay. And we do that by declaring an IB inspectable. Okay, and we're going to say var top color, and that's going to be of type UI color. And for right now, I'll just say something like UI color dot blue. And so now what we're doing is we're creating a variable that can be changed inside of the storyboard, and that's going to be a color picker that we can be able to choose. Okay, and then we're going to say did set, and we're going to say self dot needs layout. Okay, so if we click on self dot needs layout right here, it says that what this does is it invalidates the current layout of the receiver and triggers a layout update during the next update cycle. Okay, so basically when we're in storyboard, if we click on this and change the color, when we set it, that's what this keyword here is, did set, then we're gonna say, okay, we've changed some stuff, so go ahead and update how we look, update the layout of this view. Okay, and so we're gonna need a couple variables here because we're making a gradient, and of course a gradient is, you have usually it's two colors. It can be multiple colors, but you're changing gradually from one color to another color, and it just sort of blends nicely together, right? So we got a top color, and then we're gonna have, of course, a bottom color, and I'm just actually gonna copy this and paste it for sake of time. Say bottom color, and we'll change this one to say UI color dot green. And same thing, once we change it, we're just going to update our layout. Okay, But what's going to happen when we update our layout? Well, we haven't said what needs to happen when we update it. So we are going to override our layout subviews, because so what's happening is when we change a color, we say set needs layout, and what happens when you say set needs layout, then the layout of the view is updated, and this function right here is called. All right, so here is where we're going to actually create our layer and add it to this UI view subclass. Okay, so working with gradient layers in Swift is actually pretty easy. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to create a variable called gradient layer. And that's going to be of type CA gradient layer, where CA stands for core animation. And if you click on here, right here, you can see the description says a layer that draws a color gradient over its background color, filling the shape of the layer, including rounded corners. Okay, so we're going to create the gradient layer, and then we're going to set up some of its properties. Okay, so what does a gradient need? Well, first off, it needs some colors, of which we've already created a couple here. It needs a starting and an end point, and it needs to know how big of the shape it is going to be filling. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So it needs colors, start and end point, and to know how big it's going to be. Okay. So to start with, we're going to say gradient layer dot colors is equal to, and you see that it is expecting an array of UI or CG colors actually. So we're going to say top color dot CG color, and then bottom color dot CG color. Okay, so now we have set up the colors that are going to be included in this gradient. Now we're going to set up the start and end point. And to talk about the start and end point, I created this little graph for you. So in iOS, the UI views, they have their own coordinate system, okay? So a UI view, the origin is 0, 0, so x equals 0 and y equals 0. And that's actually at the top left, which might be a little bit counterintuitive to you, right? So in school, you probably learned with graphs that the origin is down here in the bottom left. Not so with iOS. I don't know why, but the origin is up here in the top left at 0, 0. And the y-axis grows more positive as you go down, and the x-axis grows more positive as you go to the right. So with UI views, the numbers are normalized to 1, okay? So 0 being the least and 1 being the most. All right, so here at the top left, we're at 0, 0. And then here at the bottom right is 1, 1. Or here at the top right, x is 1 and y is 0. Or here at the bottom left, x is 0 and y is 1. So with that in mind, if we wanted a gradient that went cascading from the top left to the bottom right, the starting point would be 0, 0, and the end point would be 1, 1. And if we take a look at our designs, it does indeed look like our gradient flows from the top left to the bottom right. So I'm thinking our start point needs to be here at 0, 0, and our end point needs to be down here at 1, 1. All right, so let's go ahead and code that up. So that just looks like this. We're going to say gradient layer dot start point is equal to, and if you check out right here, what are we expecting? Come on, autocomplete. Oh, looks like it's not going to show me, but it's expecting a CG point. Okay, so core graphics point. And so if you just write CG point and then pull up a parentheses, it'll give us some options for auto completion. So we're going to do ints here. So we're going to say 0, 0 is our start point, and gradient layer dot end point is equal to, oopsie, CG point, and that is going to be 1, 1. Okay. So now we need to tell it what size the view is going to be. So we're going to say gradient layer dot frame is equal to, and for that we're just going to set it equal to the size of the UI view that it is a subclass of. So we're going to say self dot bounds. And then lastly, we've just created a layer, we haven't added it to anything. So we're gonna add this gradient layer, which is a CA gradient layer, to the UI views layers. So we're gonna say self.layer insert sublayer. So this inserts the specified layer into the receiver's list of layers at the specified index. Okay, so we're going to say insert, the layer that we are going to insert is of course our gradient layer, and we are going to place it at 0, meaning that it's at the first layer. All right, so we're going to save this and just going to clean this up a little bit, get rid of the empty space. Save that, and let's go over this whole entire file just one more time. To start off, we have IB designable, which means that it's going to be able to work in Storyboard. We have our IB inspectable variables that will be able to change inside of Storyboard dynamically. And then we have our override function of layout subviews, which is called whenever we change one of our variables here. And inside of that, we create a layer, we set the layer colors, we set the start and end point and the frame, and lastly we insert that sublayer to the UI view itself. Okay, so that looks good. We're going to save that, and we're going to come back over here to our main.storyboard, and I'm going to select our channel VC, and I'm going to select our view here, and we're going to change its class to a gradient view. Now check this out. This is going to do a little bit of work here because it's got to reset the storyboard, but if everything goes according to plan, we should see a nice gradient view right here. And voila! So you'll see here that we have, we're starting here at 0, 0, and we're ending up here. So with these start and end points, you can kind of think of it like you're drawing a string between those 2 points, and the color gradient lines has to be perpendicular to that line at any point. Okay, so imagine a string from here to here. All of these gradient lines are perpendicular to that line. Okay, so you can do some pretty cool things with these gradient views. Let's go ahead and just come over here and let's see if we can change these. We can change this to red, and yeah, it should update automatically here in Storyboard, so that is pretty cool. And I just wanted to show you a couple of other cool things with the gradients. You'll see here in our gradient layer.colors, it doesn't have to be just 2. You can actually put as many gradient colors in here as you want. So for instance, we're gonna sandwich the middle color, so we're gonna say top color, bottom color, top color .cg color. And then let's jump back into Storyboard and see what that looks like. There, so now you see that we have 3 different colors here in the gradient. And then let's go ahead and show you how you can switch up some of these other things here. So bring back my, let's see here, my coordinate system. So say you wanted a gradient that was, just straight up and down. What would your start and end point need to be? Well, your start point would need to be right here in the middle, and your end point would need to be right here in the middle at the bottom. So what would that look like? Well, your y would be 0, and your x would be 0.5, right? So here I'm going to say 0.5, and then at the bottom, it needs to be all the way at the, I'm sorry, it should be 0.5 for x and 0 for y. And then at the bottom, y should be 1 and x should still be 0.5. So let's go ahead and see what that looks. I'm going to save that and come back to our storyboard. There we go. So now we see that we have our gradient just straight up and down. And same thing if you wanted it to be a vertical looking gradient, then you would just change it to 0.5 for the y, 0 for x, and then the endpoint would be 1 for x and 0.5. So I'm going to save that and come back to storyboard. And there you go. So we can do all sorts of cool things with gradients. And then the last thing that we want to do is actually just set these to the right colors that we want to use, because as you probably noticed, this is nothing like the colors that we want to be seeing here. All right, So what those colors actually are, let's go back to our gradient view and switch things back. Just gonna switch these back to where we want them, 0, 0, and 1, 1. Then I'm gonna get rid of this third color. And then I'm gonna show you something cool. So in the old days, you'd either have to use the standard colors that UI Color comes with, or code your own using the UI Color initialized with the RGB components. Or now you can just do something with like this, color literal, and then you can double click on this and put in your own colors, whatever you want them to be. All right, so let me just pull up here the colors that we want this to be. Let's see here. So this purple is going to be, whoops, right here, hex color 4A, 4D, D8. So that's our top color. And our bottom color, I'm gonna do the same thing here, color literal, then double click on it to change it, go to other, and its hex color is 2C, D4, D8. All right, that looks good. All right, so I'm gonna save that. Come back over to our storyboard, and there we go. All right, so we got our good looking gradient. Let's go ahead and compare this. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. All right, so this guy right here we can also change to be the gradient view. So I'm going to change that as well. All right, so that's looking good. All right, so what's next? Here in our channel VC, what do we got? We got a label up here. We got another label here, a button, a table view, and whoops, a image view here, and then a button down here. All right, so let's go ahead and get cracking on that. So here, I'm going to go ahead and search for label. Gonna drag you in here, drag another label in. Then we need a button up here, a button down here, and an image view as well down here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started up here. I'm gonna grab both of these labels and change the color to white. I'm gonna change the font to custom, and we're gonna go with Helvetica New. And that looks fine. I'm going to say done. This top one though is actually going to be style bold, and we're going to bump that up a couple of sizes, so that looks good. And I'm going to change the title to smack, and then if you get like this where it's truncated like that, if you click on it and just go command equal, it will fit it to its size. All right. And this guy right here, we're going to call this channels, right? And then we're going to decrease its size all the way down to 12 right here. Okay, and then we're going to say command equal on it again. And that looks pretty good. And this button over here, this is the add channel button, so it's a plus sign. We don't need any text there for the button. So I delete the text. And then here I'm going to go to its image right here. And this is add channel button. All right, so we got that right there. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this view controller here. All right, so that's starting to take shape a little bit. So down here we have our image view, and so I'm just going to resize it. Let's go ahead and throw an image in there so that we can actually see it. And the image that we want is called menu profile icon. All right, and that looks good. We need to resize it. So the size is 75 by 75. I'm just going to drag this down here to the bottom. There we go. And then I'm going to drag this guy right here. Let's go ahead and change its text color to white, of course. Change the font to custom, and Helvetica New is fine, but this is going to be bold. And that looks good. I'm going to change its title to login. All right, and then yeah, that looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and start adding some constraints here. All right, so for this guy, let's go 0 from the left and 24 from the top. And then for channels, let's go 0 from the left and 20 from the bottom of the smack. And why does that look different? Let's see here. Did I not do a left constraint? Leading space. Oh, that should be 0. Leading space should be 0. All right, and then for our button here, we're going to go ahead and do a control drag to the channels label. I'm going to say center vertically. And then we need to add a right constraint. And you may think that we should just do a standard spacing from the right of, 20. But if we run this, remember that we actually have a top view controller that doesn't disappear entirely. So that's probably going to be obstructed. Yep, see? So you can't even really see it. You can see it for just a second, but it's being covered up. So remember, we made the we left 60 points on the right. So what we want to do is actually, if we have it selected, we can go to its size constraint, and we can drag its trailing space equal to 20, and I can just change this to, we want this to be 72. All right, so let's go ahead and run that again. And if we click on this, there we have it. And you know what? I think that was 72. What I wanted was 72 without the constraint, with the margins. You can see we have some constraints, or the margins right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this and then add it again, but uncheck the constraint to margins right here. Okay. So what I did that kind of quick, but I deleted the old constraint that had the margin already built into it. Then I clicked on it again, added a new constraint, and made sure that the constraint to margins was unchecked. And I'm going to say add constraint, and that should do it for us. All right, so these are all constrained up here at the top. Let's go ahead and do these guys down here at the bottom. So I'm going to say 0 from the left, 20 from the bottom, and width and height. And for this guy right here, I'm going to control drag to the image here. I'm going to say center vertically, and then I'm going to give it 20 from the left. All right, so that is now also fully constrained. And last but not least, I'm gonna throw a table view in here. And let's go ahead and just kind of throw you in here and drag you out. And I'm gonna constrain that 0 from the left, 20 from the top, 0 from the right, and 20 from the bottom. Say add 4 constraints. And then I'm going to make sure that our background is clear on this guy. So background here, and say clear color. All right, then I'm going to save this and run it just to see how it looks. And voila, there we go. Looking pretty snazzy. All right, so we're making some great progress on our UI right here. We created an awesome gradient file that you can reuse anywhere for anything that inherits from UI views. So yeah, we're making some good progress, and yeah, so next thing we're going to do is go ahead and save and commit our changes, so because we are good little programmers. So I'm going to say git, make sure I'm on the right branch here for lesson 3. I'm going to say git status, I'm going to say git add, git commit -m, and this is lesson 3. And then I'm going to actually push this branch up to my DevSlopes repo. So I'm going to say git push origin lesson -03. Put in my password. And that is pushed up to the online repo, and we are looking good. All right, so in the next lesson, we're going to continue working on the UI, and hopefully we'll get to the login view controller, all right? So I hope you guys are having fun, and I will see you in the next one.